Welcome to the Explorer Poet Podcast, an exploration of the blurry line separating our physical world from our abstract realities. Conversations and stories, myths and reality, science and the gods we worship, the esoteric and the everyday. Come explore with me. Monica Martinez, welcome to the Explorer Poet Podcast.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I came across your work through the Joseph Campbell Foundation's Myth Blast newsletter, and you've got a couple of different pieces that you've written for them. And so I thought, I'll look into this, into more of your work. And you seem to be doing some really interesting things. You are obviously a writer for Myth Blast, but it looks like you also do a podcast, but you're also a practicing psychoanalyst. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, let's start by the piece. It was such a joy to write the piece, because I was invited to write about the wise one. And then I started thinking about a movie because this year is about relating the archetype to one movie. And then it naturally turned out to be that trilogy that's worldwide famous, And it was so interesting because I had to be there at New Zealand with my daughter, and everything, gradually evolved. And it was really nice to dig into that movie again, that never-ending movie, and watch it again, and realize the really transformation that character goes through. So we usually tends to think as an elder person, as a ready person, and it's not about it. So it was really, it was a piece that I'm so proud. It was probably the best thing I wrote this year so far.
Yeah. I thought it was great. And just for the listeners, so we're talking about Lord of the Rings, and the character you're writing about is Gandalf, who starts off as Gandalf the Grey and then becomes Gandalf the White. And you wrote about him in the perspective of the wise older figure, the wise older archetype.
Yeah. And it's not an archetype that is very, people don't look for it very much these days, do they? Yeah. People are always trying to look younger and beautiful. And so it was kind of a important, time to think about it and realize how this can turn into a very special moment to think about how to become an elder. Is such a fascinating journey as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you point out in the story, you even said they're just growing older, just becoming an older person doesn't inherently make you wise. And I think as a younger person, when I was a child, I thought that there was just going to come a point where I just understood things, or I thought, looking up to older people, I just thought, oh, they just understand things. And it's actually, in order to become wise, I think it requires a lot of effort, because you have to really work on seeing what the world actually is. You have to see reality and then learn from that, rather than the narrative that's going on in your head, and try to learn from that.
Yeah. It's interesting because archetypes, they have these polarities, and not everybody will become wise, really, but all of us will definitely become an old person, but not wise. So that's the tricky part of it, how to become wise. And thinking about this movie made me realize that it's about flexibility, and letting go, and really looking toward the younger people what they need and just open space for them, and it's not something really easy to do. So it was really it was not just sitting there to write. It involved memories and watching it over with my daughter, eating burnt popcorn, and thinking. Of course, there was a deadline, and then it was about sitting and writing it and praying for it to be right and nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. For you, because obviously you're interested in this world that Joseph Campbell explored, you're interested in the world that people like Carl Jung have explored. So if I just going way back in your own story, when did you notice like an interest in kind of the symbolic or imagery based life? When did you start becoming interested in stories or psychology? Was this something that came to you at a young age, or was it something you kind of discovered about yourself later in life?
It's a good question because recently I realized that the first book I bought myself ever, probably I was 8 or 9 years old, was about mythology, and the Greek myth. And then mythology was already there. I didn't know why, but and then it was about writing because my first graduation was on journalism. So narratives really is the thread that evolved and united everything that I do in my life. And nowadays, as a psychologist, it is still narratives because whenever I see somebody, I need to understand the narratives the person is telling about him or herself, real narrative that is behind that narrative, because we are Jungian analysts. So it's about trying to see the real self of the person.
Yeah, it seems to me that I come up against this a lot, actually, where there are different fields or different branches or different schools of psychology. And it seems like the Jungian camp is very focused on stories or narratives. And not just, as you were saying, not just one narrative, but it seems like people's psyche is kind of built on layers of stories that kind of reinforce each other. And then there also seems to be another, I guess, more kind of mainstream camp of psychology that's much more focused on like a biomedical explanation of what's going on. And it seems that in that field, we get a lot more labels around disorders, and there's more like medication prescribed. And it seems, from my experience and just my own personal psychological journey, dealing with many things, and then also reading and also observing, speaking with people, it seems that the narrative path of psychology, or like of doing some kind of psychotherapy to deal with your own narratives and get back into your stories and see where they come from, it seems to be a much better path towards an actual solution rather than, say, the Band-Aid of a pharmaceutical subscription or prescription.
The way we really see it in our offices today is everything blended, mixed, because sometimes the person do need medication, and it's good that they are there available for us. And psychotherapy, it's really an ego work. And it's okay, especially with young people, because they are trying to discover who they are, what they are, they will be doing, and so on. But and Jung was really he had this clear idea that the second part of life is really when we start deconstructing who we think we are, and to a certain point, the things that allowed us to reach that time and that spot in life, and then we can start letting go parts of it and start becoming who we are in a very deep level. And that's Jungian analysis, But sometimes with the same person, we do psychotherapy because the person needs that at that moment. And sometimes it's really about working with dreams, dream works, and active imagination and other techniques. So it's I think it's nowadays is as rich as that,
Yeah, it does make sense to approach it from whatever angle, whatever therapy or process that the actual person needs. And I could see when I think about this in with medication in general, not just in relation to psychology, but medication in general. I think people often think that the medication itself is what heals us, when in reality, it's more like the medication puts our body in a state where it can heal itself. Because there's not a medication that actually heals you. There might be medications that get rid of pathogens or viruses or whatever, but in reality, you're putting your body into a state where it can heal itself. And maybe, yeah, I could see how in a psychological setting, if you're struggling with something, a medication can put you into a state where then you can then deal with that issue. But if you don't deal with it, the medication's not going to get rid of it entirely.
No. I think it's above all the level of suffering, Sometimes people are suffering too much. And maybe it's not that necessary, so the person can just hold on and take some medication and then talking superficial level and, wait for the better time to really, really dive into more problematic things, so to speak. And then life flows again. It's the soul time. It's a different time, no need to hurry. I think that's about it. And, Campbell knew that because he used it to say, whenever the person discover his or her motivation, the person will just align and move on. So that's where narratives really helps,
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to that book that you bought when you were 8 or 9 years old on mythology, was it a Joseph Campbell book or was it from somebody else?
No, it was really a book. I don't even remember the author. It was not a grand author, but the importance, I think it was the field of it, and it was about this Greek myth. And I was just listening to a lecture in a congress recently, and they were talking about grief and Greek myth. And it was beautiful because, again, the same old stories, but when you see it with a different perspective, and then you see, oh my goodness, if a person with the matter archetype active will react, just like trying to finish the world to look for what is lost, and a different person with a different archetype will totally react totally in a different way. So you see the very same story that but with a tiny, tiny, tiny difference, and you do again this aha. It's so beautiful. It's a never ending passion with the same theme.
Yeah, I as a writer and as somebody interested in myth and archetype, like I really understand what you're saying. I kind of see the whole of human history is this evolution of stories. And I think that the stories are almost innate to us. They must be, I almost imagine that they're programmed into our genetics or something, where the the stories that we tell are the same stories that humans have been telling forever. It's just that the context changes. And so we have new places, new characters, slightly new situations or circumstances. But in essence, they're all the same motif that's been encoded into people forever. And I find it fascinating that if you observe stories enough, you can see that connection and the slight changes as time goes on. Yeah, I get very excited about that as well.
Yeah. But you think, I wonder sometimes what IA will do with these stories, because, okay, it's still our stories, but I don't know. What do you think?
That's a good question. Do you think that AI could come up with a story that's vastly different from anything we've ever seen? Like, could it shock us with some kind of idea or it's hard to imagine because all stories are based off of a similar kind of story arc. Similar to, if you look at hero stories, Joseph Campbell laid out the various aspects of a hero's story that you're going to come across. It would be very difficult to imagine AI suddenly, putting some other version, some other aspect into that story that we've never come up with before.
Shall we ask AI to do it?
um, yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, I don't know. AI is yeah, I just had a conversation last week about AI, and it is a very interesting thing. It's because we as humans are building it, um, and we have an incomplete understanding of our own psychology and the workings of our own stories. And so it's, we're building it and it's starting to understand us based off the information that we provide it. And so it's easy to see it as a reflection of us. It's easy to see it as maybe a sentient being who's not too dissimilar from us. But I think that the truth is probably pretty far from that, where, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
This term at my graduate course I deliver at the university here in São Paulo. We were, studying AI and narratives, and through articles and so on. And I really like to test, to push things. And and I was really, it was really, and then I start, really testing different apps and so on, and watching a lecture here and there. And I was amazed with these things people are doing. And it's a new world. It feels like, remember Joseph, Star Wars, that scene that Joseph Campbell talks about, the bar scene, where they are there and people are about to depart to different planets and so on. It feels to me we are in that scene, and of course it's the same people, but we are in interesting times. And obviously it's clear there are people who thinks it's a wonderful things and uses without a critical approach. And there are people that sees it as a demon thing. and don't use it or just criticize it without using it and testing it. So probably it's a combination of both things. There is light and shadows on it, and we will discover it more and more within time. But that would be, you just give me this nice idea. What if we ask AI, a good AI, to create a myth that has never been created, right?
Yeah, my guess would be that it could create a myth that we'd never seen before in the sense that it could come up with characters we've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
It could put us in a place we've never been. It could send us on a quest for a thing we've never heard of before. But at the same time, those are just narrative motifs anyways. And so the underlying story architecture is going to be the same as the stories that we've always told. It just may be that the context would be different, which is what we keep doing as humans anyways, is creating new context.
Yeah, probably. It would be fun to do. And sometimes the problem is that it just make it up things without it hallucinates. So, but
Yeah.
hallucination in this case would not be a bad thing at all, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fun part of stories is being able to see things that don't actually exist in the real world. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It kind of makes me think, circling all the way back to us talking about the wise elder,
Mm-hmm.
going into this stage of technology, it will be important for us to have some wise elders around because, for example, children who are growing up in this world today, this is the only world that they know. This world of technology and screens and constant connectiveness and now AI, it's just going to be so familiar to them. And I observe this thing all the time where it's really hard for people to imagine a world that is not the world they exist in, as if things have always been the way they are. And I think it'll be important for us to have some wise elders who have transitioned through many stages of technology to help us pass into this future.
Yes, because traditionally the wise people, they are supposed to hold on to traditions, but also they are the steady ones that say to the young ones, go, you can go. I will be here to support you. So, it's a clinical evidence. I'm not talking about statistics, but from my experience, whenever I see a young person with some disorder, you look back and you see there are no wise people there for them, or if they are there, they are not in this character of the wise person, doing this, grounding, stability, performance for them, letting them know that they can make mistakes because they will be there, to support them in their mistakes too, and so on, So, um, so it's an important part of the archetype as well, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And even in your piece, you wrote, where the old one clings to the past, the wise one releases, transforms, and renews. And they're doing that. They're doing that for the younger generation. And so if you have, it's pretty common to see the older generation, rather than have openness and an understanding for the younger generation, they have this restrictive attitude where they are trying to get what they want from the younger generation rather than sacrificing themselves. And for me, it seems like if you look at humanity as a species, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, if you look at it from almost any perspective, spiritual, social, it's always the older generation's job to ensure the younger generation moves forward with what is good. And it's the older generation's job to kind of strip themselves of what they inherited that will no longer be beneficial moving forward. It's a very difficult balance between conservatism and liberalism, where you need both, and it's the wise person, I think, who's able to navigate that balance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This weekend, I had a chance to watch a beautiful 19 90, oh come on, it was a Oscar winner of best actress, the support actress. That's the title, right? Called Mirani. It's a South Korean production, and the protagonist was a grandmother, and there was this couple that they went to the U.S., to run a farm there from Korea, and there was this little boy, and he had some heart condition, and then this grandmother comes to help. And it was so important because, well, it's an old movie, so it won't be any spoiler, but at the end of the movie, he really overcomes this condition because the grandmother was not telling him to hold, and don't be a child because he had this heart condition, He just let them run and do things just like any other kid. So meaning that sometimes it's also the elder, the wise elder person that push the young person to be her or himself because of experience, So it was such a beautiful movie, and it was about this. And at the beginning, the little boy complained because he said, "You don't look like a grandmother. You don't do cookies, And she did a far most important thing for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's that generation, the older generation. It's important for them to be able to encourage also the younger generation where they need that encouragement.
And to be stronger. As Jung says, the problem of the first part of life is really to have courage, to enter life, to be in life. And some young people, they are too afraid, and that's perhaps why we have these anxiety levels and the depression levels and so on, because it's about letting go and being brave enough to really face life.
Yeah, to go and engage with life. And it really is that older generation, the older generation, parents, teachers, whatever it may be, religious leaders, they can really influence kids, particularly if they're unconscious of the ways that they were held back when they were younger. And so they kind of just repeat that pattern. It can be very harmful. Yeah, absolutely. So you, in your writing, in the piece on Lord of the Rings, you talk about Gandalf and how he always comes across as the wise elder, but he starts off as Gandalf the Grey, and then after he's sacrificed himself and he comes back, he's Gandalf the White. I'm curious if you can dive into that imagery a little bit, or like what's the symbology of the transition from gray to white?
It's an important part of it, isn't it? Because he wonders. And if he didn't do that, he wouldn't really evolve himself. And making a connection with current times, people are really holding on so much to what they think they are, and doing the same things, or don't wanting to really really belong to things, to families. I happen to listen a lot. Oh, now I have a family, now I have kids, so I do my own things, as I used it to do. And it's true. It's difficult because people, let's say, nowadays, between the age of 30 something to 60, they are very busy supporting a family if they have one, or a business if they have one. But that's part of life, isn't it? So it's about being there for something or someone. And sometimes that's why Jung and Campbell, they talk about the secret marriage, in that symbolic sense of devoting yourself to something, because sometimes people that thing, let's say a marriage, but they want just a part of it, and sometimes it means to surrender to a part of your, what you think is your personality or your ego, for something bigger than that, larger than that. I think that's what Gandalf does there, because he could have, he could have continued being Gandalf the Grey, and didn't, did what he did. But symbolically, a part of him dies in there. In the movie, he really dies, but day-to-day life, it's about a symbolic thing that we have to let it go for us to grow, just like when a snake change the peel, otherwise we cannot grow.
Yeah, just like similar to a snake, we have to shed that exterior self. Yeah, I think I haven't seen Lord of the Rings in a very long time, but as I remember, he dies when they're trying to escape some large cave, and he allows everybody else to escape by sacrificing himself to attack the whatever monster is trying to get them, and that monster, he knocks it down into a deep, deep pit, and he kind of goes with it down in there, and that's how he dies. It's actually very interesting because not only is he supposed to be dying, but he's going into like the deepest, darkest, scariest place that you can go, way down, at the bottom of the pit with this monster, which is very symbolic of what you're talking about as far as letting go, or letting parts of ourselves go or die. It often requires going down into a pretty dark, scary place emotionally before you can rise back out of that. But when you rise out of it, you're no longer burdened by that thing. And maybe that's kind of the whiteness, the purity, the having become clean, coming back without those burdens. Very similar to the Christian symbology or imagery of the baptism and coming out of baptism as a clean person, kind of a purified self.
Yeah. The tricky thing is that whenever we study Jung, we know is albedo in alchemy. It's not the end. You have another part, rubedo, where you probably will mix negredo and albedo, the black part and the white part. And then the mixture of it will deliver you a new which is called the individuation process. So it's all about light and shadows, but they have to be together. Otherwise, the person won't feel complete. But one important thing about, as you said, going deep down, where it's probably the worst place you ever be. You don't want to be there. You are so afraid to be there. There's the bad part to be there, but usually it's where the treasures are. So narratives and movies tell about a lot about it, because it's where the person discover courage, or discover something very important and really gets transformed. But again, it's easy to talk about, but it's not easy to be there. Nobody likes to be there. I don't like to be there. You probably don't like to be there too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely been there, and it's a painful place to be.
Yeah.
But when you come back and you do have that treasure, it's not always some grand, big treasure, but you come back with something significant, and you feel like the quest was worth it if you come back alive. That going through that kind of rebirth process, and I think that in regards to this whole conversation, I think that we have a very strong emphasis these days on identity or personality or whatever those things even mean. But in reality, it seems to me that those are themselves just constructs. There is no like identity that I can wish upon myself, that I can force everybody else to see me as that thing. In fact, I have almost no control over the way that people perceive me, except for, through, I can be an honest person, I can be a kind person, I can be a patient person. But beyond that, nobody's going to perceive me exactly how I want them to. And in reality, I don't even know exactly how I want to be perceived. And so I think that this idea of identity in general is actually flawed. It's an erroneous concept that we all struggle with. But I can also see why we struggle with it, because we live in this Western world, this Western monotheistic world that's very focused on the individual rather than the collective. And so we're all very much trying to navigate that. But I do think that in a kind of an ironic twist of fate or destiny, maybe, the more you can let go of the desire to control your identity or to put forth an identity that you want others to see, the more you can shed the stories or narratives that aren't helpful, and the more you can kind of die to certain things and be reborn. In reality, what happens is the more you become your genuine self, and the more your whatever the true self is, you become more and more of that, which in the end is the treasure. It is the benefit of all the work, because you become unburdened by the desire to please others or to impress others, and you just get to go through life as open to whatever happens in the moment, and it's much more enjoyable that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like very much Winnicott's phrase that's more like, we have to be good enough, uh, and it solves the question because we and we won't be 100% nothing, you know. So and we won't please 100% of the people, and it's impossible. So if we enough about doing things that we are comfortable with, you know, that's okay. Um, in the sense that I have no control on what people thinks about me, and most of these things we do know about Jung's studies, the Jungian studies, they are projections, you know, of inner contents that are shadows they really are not aware of. So if I have, you know, a bunch of people looking at me, probably they will see different things. Some of them will see the woman in me, some of them will see the Brazilian in me, some of them will see the professor in me, some of them will see the psychologist in me. And if they have problems with women, with Brazilians, you know, and you see, they will have problems, or the opposite, they will like me very much because of these things. And it's okay, I cannot control that. What I can control is being a good person towards what I believe now that it is to be a good person. There are some ethical procedures, and they are established. So if I agree with them, I am supposed to do them. So it's something that no doubt we cannot go against it, you know. But we are not supposed to kill people. We are not supposed to, you know, these sort of things. It's beyond discussion. So but whatever people will think about us, it's beyond our control. So we cannot do things because of that. And and again, it's interesting what you said, because in the here in the West we talk about ego, and some philosophies, yoga and so on. And Jung said that, and I agree with him. They try to neutralize this ego, and it's part of their philosophy, and it works there with the whole system, with their whole mythology. But here we have to have a very structural ego. Otherwise, we are not able to cope with everything we do. So to have a flexible ego, it's okay, but we need this ego in the sense of it's not about inner life. It's not all about this hypothetical, genuine, you know, imaginary self. Uh, it would be nice too, but we have a body, you know, we have bills to pay and so on too.
Yeah, like life is life, and we just have to experience it in a way. Man, you covered a lot. You covered some very interesting things about projection and then also ego. And I think it's really interesting what you said about projection, because when people are looking at you, they're judging you, or they're just thinking about you, they're analyzing you. What they're actually doing is seeing aspects of themselves in you, or aspects that they fear they lack in you. And so in a real sense, people aren't seeing you, they're just seeing a reflection of themselves in some way. And so I think in a real sense, it took me a long time to, and I'm not saying I could ever not project onto other people. But the more I was able to unburden myself with my own history or my own stories, the more I was able to see myself as a whole human, good and bad, light and dark, light and shadow, the more I came to be able to see other people as just people. And so you stop seeing them for their the projections you're putting on them, and you see them more as just a person, just somebody who's navigating life, which is, it's very helpful, because then you also when somebody, so you're trying to be a good person, but when somebody is not a good person around you or not a good person to you, then it's also much easier to see, oh, they're not doing this for the reason that I would have initially thought. They also have some underlying unconscious thing, a complex or neurosis that they are dealing with, and they're unconscious to their own behavior, because in a moment the emotion can overtake them, and then they just identify with that emotion. And so it's just people operating on their pre-programmed operating system.
Just like us.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
beautiful part of it.
Yeah.
Because eventually we do that too, right? And the difference is that we know that whenever we are, somebody just, we feel very angry about something, or I'm not supposed to say any bad words here, right? Four-letter words and so on. But imagine one, and we feel like that. You can imagine that it's a part of yourself that is, bubbling inside. And then the idea is to ask yourself, what is really wrong with me? What is really trying to express? And at the moment is not easy. And sometimes that's why we need help. We undertake supervision, we undertake also therapy, because even with our training, we cannot analyze ourselves, So that's the beauty again, So it humanizes us, because it's not only about training. We are humans, and we will always be. So we need a human to help us to understand our own anxieties and fears. Just like here, we are talking here, but it's something new to me too. So I was wondering, how it will be, and turned out to be a lovely conversation. And the second time will be easier, but we are humans. We really, emotions, we cannot control emotions, and good emotions make us feel just like the way I'm feeling now. But bad emotions, not bad, but difficult to handle emotions, just like anger. They are supposed to have a space in ourselves too. How do you handle your own emotions?
Well, for a long time, I was pretty unaware of my emotions, and I had to learn to recognize them. And for me, because I was unaware of my emotions, what I was unconsciously doing, I think, for most of my life was ignoring them through kind of a tightening, a resistance, which for anybody who's experienced that, it really just, all it does is makes it so that you walk around with a pit in your stomach all the time, like a discomfort. And so I had to learn to not only feel them, but not resist them. And so to just simply sit and actually experience the sensation in my body in a way where I wasn't judging it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I still have a long ways to go, but just to actually just let it process through you, to feel it, not resist it, to say it's okay. It's just like you were saying. It's easy to judge emotions as negative, but really they're not negative. They're just a little uncomfortable, and you've got to sit with them. But another part of that, and this harkens back to what you were saying before, also about the ego. I think a part of why I was so resistant was because for much of my life I had a weak ego. I had like a conditioned ego based on my culture and my surroundings and my environment. And once I learned to do that kind of relax, be open, don't fight back, don't get defensive, don't avoid, just face the thing. Over time, I think it allowed my ego to become less weak. And it's this interesting thing because once your ego becomes less weak, meaning that, like you were saying, in the East, they want to obliterate the ego. But in the West, I think what we do is we actually identify with the ego. And so it's kind of two extremes on a polarity. And it seems like balance is always the healthy path. And so once the ego, for me, this is the experience I've had, is like once the ego is strong enough, then it's willing to take a back seat sometimes. So for an example would be if I'm in an argument with my wife and she says something about my behavior that in the past I would have gotten very defensive about, but now I can go, oh, just take a deep breath. Oh yeah, you're right. I do that thing, or in a creative session, I write. And so in a writing session, the ego has a job there, but that job is really just to force myself to sit down and turn on the computer. And then the ego can get out of the way and allow the unconscious to kind of bubble up the creative juices or the words that come down on the page. And so, I think it's been a lot of just practice not tightening up, practice not resisting. And I could look at that both from an emotional perspective, but also an ego perspective, where you just have to be open to what's happening and accept it. It doesn't mean that you have to tolerate the badness. If somebody is being not a good person, if they're being cruel towards you, if they're trying to manipulate you or abuse you in some way, the other benefit of having a not weak ego is you don't have to lash out back at them with an equal amount of anger or emotion. But what that stronger ego can allow you to do is to set a healthy boundary and just either step away from the situation or speak up in a calm way that states your unwillingness to participate.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned this point of relationships, because James Hillman, a very important Jungian analyst, he created the one branch of the analytical psychology connected with archetypes. He used to say that there is no harder field of battle to work on archetypes than in marriage, because the closer the relationship, the closer the projections and this dance, so also the greater the opportunity to learn. But it's a tricky thing because it's a 24/7, right? So, but couples who can have some time, and work a lot with repair, and they hugely grow because they can evolve together in this perspective. But again, it's a battlefield in that sense, in the psychological sense. And imagine nowadays with this velocity, with all these demands and so on, it's really a miracle that we still have marriage. But it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity in life. Yeah.
Being a married person and being this kind of like explorer of the psychology of myself and others, marriage, I've been married for 16 and a half years now. And I had to really figure that out. Like, what is this and what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, we have a lot of modern myths that we're operating on that we're unaware of. We are aware of them as realities in our life, but we're unaware that they are myths.
Mm-hmm.
And romance or the modern couple or marriage is a version of our modern myth. And it's not something that you have to, myths aren't something to just outright reject, but it's good to understand them. And I think a lot of people literalize the myth of romance far too much. The idea being that if you find someone out there who's for you, your soulmate or whatever, then that person will complete you and you'll complete them. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. When people get too close, their boundaries merge too much to the point where their psyches kind of bleed into each other, or they kind of expect the other person to do too much for them. They're projecting far too much on their spouse. And when I was able to take a step back from that, my wife and I both, we were able to readjust our relationship in a way where we tried to pull back the projections and just see each other as real people. And just like you're saying, when people are able to treat a relationship as an opportunity for both of you to grow, that's when the myth becomes really powerful for both of you. And it's absolutely worthwhile to participate in something like that.
Yeah, because it's the conuncio, as we say, it's the alchemical marriage in that sense that Campbell and Jung and the others say that's when you really bring the best, the gold out of the plum. So it's the best story I know about it. I wrote a book with a professor of our largest university, University of São Paulo, and he was a specialist in relationships. So he studied that for 4 years here in Brazil. He knew everything about it. Although he was not a Jungian, he was behavior field. And then I asked him at that time, you have seen so many couples. What couple do you remind best? And he mentioned once he was delivering a lecture, and he was at the end of the lecture left there, at the hotel. And then there was this, old couple who asked if he need a ride, and he said yes. And then he was in the car, and then they started talking good things one about each other to him, mentioning good things about the partner. And he mentioned that he never forget that, because people tend to talk so much about themselves, and this couple, they were, oh, we were here, the lady said, because he saw this somewhere, and he said it would be very good for us to be here. And then the man said, oh, but if it was not for her, I was not really sure about coming. And she said, no, let's go. This little small nothings. And then they were praising each other, and he said, wow, it was so beautiful, because that was what was about, supporting each other in these very tiny little things. And it was a man who, he spent 40 years studying that. And it was this story he recalled the most. I really liked this story. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. Yeah, because all myth has a lot of truth to it. And I think that all myth at the heart of the myth, there's this psyche's desire for growth and consciousness. And when you apply the myth in the right way, it can help you in that way. Monica, we're already up to the hour, so it flew by really quick. And I appreciate you saying it was enjoyable, because I really enjoyed it as well. And I appreciate you taking the time. If people want to find you, your work, your writings, your book, and your podcast also that you participate in, where can they look and where can they find this stuff?
Oh, there's my website, monicamartinez.com.br. It will be by soon a brand new version, and it will be easier to find the material in English because it's in Portuguese. And there is, that's the main place. And also I have an Instagram account in English, Monica Martinez, PSI_EM.
Okay, awesome.
And the podcast is in Portuguese so far, but the podcast is nice too. Eventually, we will have subtitles in English, but it's an important thing because we realize it. We absorb lots of contents in English in Brazil, and it's important. But we have great researchers as well, and people on the field of Jungian analysis. So we start this, a small project at my university with the podcast. I was very afraid to start it. And then I just got the kick out of it. And we are inviting people who have been doing great work on that field, and finding people all over the world who can speak in Portuguese as well, especially at CG Jung Institute. So if anybody is in the field and speaks Portuguese, just be my guest and reach out, and we can consider having a conversation too. And I really would like you to thank you for your invitation. It was really a highlight of this winter. It's winter here for us. And it was lovely to try this conversational approach of a podcast. So nice to be here.
Yeah. I thought it was great too, and I appreciate you coming on. So thank you so much. Yeah, and I guess we should maybe try it again sometime, huh?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, until then, thank you, Monica. I appreciate it.